The Maasai Mara, a land where Africa's giants have roamed for centuries, a place where elephants, rhinos, and lions rule. But what if the most dangerous predator here is not nature, but man? February 10th, 2019. Kenya Wildlife Service. KWS Rangers receive a distress call. Gunshots have echoed through the plains. Poachers are nearby, and the race to save Africa's giants begins. When the Rangers arrive, it's too late. MJ, a 10-year-old black rhino, beloved by locals and tourists alike, lies lifeless. Her horn? Gone. Not far away lies Tatu, a gentle giant of the Maasai Mara, his tusks viciously removed. Victims not of nature's cycle, but of man's greed. A respected Maasai leader sadly shares, "Tatu was our guardian. His spirit protected this land. Losing him is like losing a part of ourselves. Therefore, for the Maasai people, these animals aren't just wildlife. They are cultural symbols, emblems of strength, wisdom, and resilience." But on this day, their land was soaked in blood. Poachers had used military-grade rifles, taking precise shots under the cover of dawn. This wasn't the work of desperate men. This was part of a larger, more organized, and ruthless criminal network. But who are these poachers? Who are the masterminds behind these killings, turning Africa's precious wildlife into trophies for the rich? This isn't just poaching, it's organized crime. In 2019 alone, Kenya lost 11 rhinos and 394 elephants to poachers. And while these numbers are shocking, they tell only part of the story. Each death is tied to an underground network of criminals, a network that spans across continents, where ivory and rhino horn are worth their weight in gold. A KWS Ranger shares the intensity of the crime. These criminals have connections everywhere. It's not just a local problem, it's global. They smuggle the horns and tusks out of Kenya, and it ends up in places like Vietnam and China, fueling an insatiable demand. Behind the deaths of rhinos and elephants in the Maasai Mara stands a group of criminal figures, warlords, traffickers, and smugglers. They are the puppet masters pulling the strings of a multi-billion-dollar illegal trade. And one name stands out: Faisal Muhammad Ali. Faisal Muhammad Ali, a notorious ivory smuggler, responsible for the trafficking of over 2,152 kilograms of ivory. His operation moved tons of ivory through Kenya's largest port, Mombasa, destined for black markets in China and Vietnam. This is not just about poaching, it's about money, power, and corruption. Faisal's syndicate operated like a well-oiled machine. Ivory was hidden in shipments of tea, timber, and other goods, slipped past corrupt officials and shipped off to eager buyers in Asia. It's a dark business, where lives, both human and animal, are expendable. KWS officer somberly comments, "Taking down Faisal was a victory, but we knew he wasn't alone. His network had deep roots in Kenya and stretched far beyond our borders. The demand for ivory and rhino horn is global. Thousands of miles from the savannas of Africa, ivory and rhino horn are prized commodities in Asia. In places like Vietnam and China, rhino horn is falsely believed to have medicinal properties, able to cure everything from cancer to hangovers. Meanwhile, elephant ivory is a symbol of wealth and status. But at what cost? From Kenya's ports to the streets of Vietnam, this illegal trade thrives on secrecy and corruption. In 2015, Interpol's Project Wisdom helped seize over 3 tons of ivory at Mombasa Port, Kenya's largest ever ivory haul. And yet the demand continues to grow. Behind the brutal slaughter of Africa's majestic elephants and rhinos stands a group of shadowy figures, warlords, smugglers, and businessmen whose reach extends far beyond the African plains. The ivory kingpin, Faisal Mohammed, once a respected Kenyan businessman, became known as one of the continent's most notorious ivory kingpins. From the small town of Mombasa, Faisal's operation moved tusks by the ton, smuggling them to ports in the Middle East and Asia. Between 2010 and 2013 alone, Faisal's network is believed to have moved over 2,000 kilograms of ivory, the equivalent of at least 200 dead elephants. Operating through shell companies, Faisal's team expertly concealed illegal ivory within shipments of timber and other goods. Customs officials, paid handsomely, turned a blind eye. As the blood ivory slipped unnoticed into international shipping lanes, Faisal's fortune grew. A KWS investigator reveals that Faisal was smart. He knew how to hide in plain sight, how to work the system, and how to avoid capture. But in 2014, we caught up with him. After a multi-year investigation and a global manhunt, Faisal was sentenced to 20 years in prison for trafficking ivory. His arrest was a victory for Kenyan authorities, but it barely scratched the surface of the illicit trade. While Faisal's empire was built on ivory, his associate Mansour Mohammed Surur specialized in an even rarer and more valuable commodity, rhino horn. Prized in parts of Asia for its supposed medicinal properties, rhino horn is worth more than gold on the black market. And Surur was one of its most prolific traffickers. Surur worked across borders, smuggling rhino horn from Kenya through East Africa and into the hands of buyers in Vietnam and China. His network of poachers and middlemen killed indiscriminately, fueling an insatiable demand. Between 2012 and 2018, Surur's network is believed to have trafficked horns worth over $7 million. Surur wasn't just a trafficker. He was part of a broader network involved in organized crime. He worked with arms dealers, drug traffickers, and corrupt officials. It was all connected: wildlife crime, drug smuggling, and violence. But the warlords don't operate alone. Corrupt officials grease the wheels of this deadly enterprise. In Kenya, police officers, border agents, and even politicians have been implicated in the poaching crisis, accepting bribes in exchange for safe passage of illegal ivory and rhino horn. John M. Muthuso, a high-ranking police officer, was one such official. Arrested in 2018, Muthuso was found guilty of accepting bribes to protect poachers in Maasai Mara. His conviction exposed the deep-rooted corruption that allows these crimes to flourish. Beyond Africa, the warlords have built powerful connections with international crime syndicates. Chinese and Vietnamese buyers drive the demand, while Middle Eastern ports serve as critical transit points. These traffickers aren't just interested in money. They're part of a much larger criminal network that spans continents. Impact on global security. U.S. and European law enforcement agencies have identified wildlife crime as a funding source for terrorist organizations, particularly in East Africa and the Middle East. Wildlife trafficking syndicates are closely linked to criminal networks involved in arms smuggling and drug trafficking. But the consequences of poaching extend far beyond the immediate loss of these magnificent creatures. Each elephant, rhino, or endangered species plays a crucial role in maintaining the delicate balance of the ecosystems they inhabit. Elephants, for example, are often referred to as ecosystem engineers. By felling trees and clearing pathways, they create environments that sustain other species. Rhinos graze on grasses, preventing overgrowth and promoting biodiversity. When these animals are lost to poachers, entire ecosystems begin to unravel. The ripple effect is devastating, impacting everything from soil health to the food chain. And while this destruction may seem distant, the collapse of ecosystems threatens global biodiversity and, ultimately, human survival. If we lose the keystone species that hold ecosystems together, the consequences will reach every corner of the planet, including ours. The fight for survival is on, and it is Maasai warriors versus crime syndicate. But while poachers and traffickers grow bolder, there's another force rising to fight back. The Maasai warriors, once protectors of their people, have now become protectors of Africa's wildlife. This is their land, and they're not going to let the criminals take it from them. Armed with knowledge passed down through generations and supported by organizations like the Kenya Wildlife Service and Big Life Foundation, Maasai Rangers are standing on the front lines of a deadly war. For them, this is not just a battle for animals, it's a battle for their culture, their identity, and their future. Thankfully, the Maasai people aren't fighting this battle alone. With over 100 Maasai Rangers trained and supported by organizations like MMWC and Big Life Foundation, they have significantly reduced poaching incidents in the Maasai Mara by as much as 80%, to quote a Maasai elder. Our ancestors lived in harmony with these animals. We teach our children to do the same. If the elephants and rhinos disappear, so will our way of life. We are fighting to protect our heritage. The poachers come with guns, but we know the land. We will never stop defending what is ours. These rangers are the first line of defense, combining traditional tracking skills with modern technology like drones and GPS. Have made over 2,000 arrests and confiscated 3,000 weapons used by poachers. The Maasai Rangers are risking everything to defend their heritage and Africa's wildlife. But with billions of dollars on the line, and the criminal syndicates growing stronger, the question remains: will the Maasai and international law enforcement be able to dismantle the Blood Ivory Empire? Or will the syndicates always stay one step ahead? Stay tuned to Crime Lore as we continue to unravel more crime stories around the world. Till then, stay safe and stay curious.